Welcome, dear listeners, to our series of short haunts, a shot of scary, just for you. So grab yourself a hot chocolate, maybe a tea, maybe something stronger, and settle in, because this is Haunted UK Podcast's Short Haunts, After Hours. When the working day ends and the lights begin to switch off one by one, offices take on a very different character. The chatter fades. Computer screens go dark and long corridors stretch out in silence. Most of us never see these places after hours, but for some people, that's when their shift is only just beginning. Today's short haunt comes from someone who worked alone in one such building and discovered that silence doesn't always mean emptiness. I worked as a contract cleaner in an office building in the Midlands for just over 3 years. It wasn't old, built in the early 2000s. All glass panels, steel frames, grey carpets, and motion sensor lighting. There was nothing traditionally creepy about it. It was modern, clinical, ordinary. I worked alone on the late shift, starting at 6 in the evening and finishing around 10:30. By 7 o'clock, most of the staff had gone home, leaving only security downstairs monitoring the cameras. I'd grown used to the quiet, the steady hum of the air conditioning, the faint buzz of fluorescent lights, the sound of my trolley wheels echoing softly along the corridors. It was a Wednesday evening when things first happened. I'd been cleaning one of the larger boardrooms on the second floor. After vacuuming, I placed the machine neatly by the door while I wiped down the long conference table. I clearly remembered unplugging it, because I always wrapped the cable straight away. It was a simple habit. As I sprayed the table, I heard the vacuum switch on behind me. It made me jump. When I turned around, the vacuum was running with the cable trailing loosely across the carpet, plugged into the wall. I switched it off and stood there staring at it, trying to reason it out. Perhaps I hadn't unplugged it properly, and perhaps I hadn't wrapped the cord. I tested it again, plugged it in, turned it on and off, unplugged it once more. Nothing unusual happened after that, so I carried on with my shift and told myself it had been nothing. But after that night, small things began to occur. They weren't dramatic or violent, just deliberate enough to feel personal. One evening, I left a cleaning cloth folded neatly on a desk while I emptied a bin. When I turned back around, the cloth was on the floor, not crumpled as if dropped, but laid flat, as though someone had carefully placed it there. On another occasion, I was mopping the corridor outside the finance office and had positioned the yellow caution sign directly behind me. Again, force of habit. I heard it scrape lightly across the tiles, and when I turned around, it had moved several feet down the corridor. There were no open windows, no drafts, and no one else on that floor. Security later confirmed that no keycards had accessed the second level during my shift. The moment that unsettled me most, though, happened a couple of weeks later. It was close to 10 o'clock, and I was finishing up in the small staff kitchen. The building felt completely still. I was rinsing out my mop in the sink when I heard 3 clear knocks coming from inside one of the closed cupboards behind me. They were measured and deliberate, not the random ticking of pipes or the shifting of wood. I froze and listened. After a few seconds, the same 3 knocks came again. I walked over, opened the cupboard door, and found only mugs stacked neatly inside. Nothing was out of place. I closed the door and stepped back, and immediately there was a loud bang from inside the cupboard. I didn't open it again. I turned the lights off, packed up my things, and went straight downstairs. When I told the security guard what had happened, he didn't laugh or dismiss it. He admitted that other cleaners had mentioned objects being slightly out of place on that same floor. Bins tipped over for no reason, chairs subtly repositioned in empty meeting rooms, taps found running when no one had been upstairs. Nothing extreme, nothing that would make headlines. but enough to leave you uneasy and constantly looking over your shoulder. I continued to work there, though I stopped wearing headphones. I wanted to hear everything around me. Sometimes when I walked down the corridor pushing my trolley, I heard footsteps behind me that kept perfect pace with my own. When I stopped, they stopped. At first, I convinced myself it was simply the echo of my steps traveling along the glass and tiled surfaces. But one night, I stopped abruptly and held my breath, and the footsteps carried on for 2 soft steps more before falling silent. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to confirm what I already felt in that moment. I handed in a request to work in a different part of the building, and on my final shift, as I walked out of the second-floor corridor for the very last time, I felt strangely calm. I reached the lift, pressed the button, and stood waiting. That was when I heard it. The faint rolling sound of trolley wheels moving across the carpet behind me. Slow, steady, approaching. I hadn't brought my trolley with me, and I had left it locked in the cleaning cupboard at the far end of the floor. The lift doors opened. I stepped inside without looking back. As the doors slid closed, I heard the trolley stop just outside, as if whoever or whatever had been pushing it had decided not to follow me any further. I never went back to the second floor when I finished that shift. And that brings us to the end of this short haunt. Office buildings are places we associate with routine, deadlines, meetings, spreadsheets and coffee breaks. They're environments built for productivity, structure and order, but once the lights dim and the last member of staff heads home, those same familiar places can take on a very different atmosphere. Long corridors, empty boardrooms, kitchens standing still in artificial light. And in places like that, the smallest disturbance can feel amplified. A vacuum cleaner that switches itself on. A warning sign that shifts across the floor. 3 deliberate knocks from inside a cupboard where no one stands. Nothing violent, nothing dramatic, just enough to unsettle. Just enough to make you question what you thought you heard or saw. Poltergeist activity is often imagined as chaos and destruction, but sometimes it's far quieter than that. Sometimes it's subtle movements, minor disruptions, the feeling that something unseen is sharing your space, keeping pace, observing. So the next time you find yourself working late, perhaps alone in an office long after everyone else has gone home, and you hear the faint echo of footsteps in a corridor that should be empty, or the gentle roll of wheels across carpet when you're certain you locked everything away, just take a moment, listen carefully. Because in buildings that never truly sleep, it may not just be the heating system settling or the pipes cooling down. And if something seems to linger behind you just out of sight, you might want to ask yourself whether you were ever the only one there in the first place. Because the next person who could be the subject of a short haunt could be you.